They won't teach you this in school, and most pulpits won't dare preach it. But the enemy doesn't need to steal your money. He only needs to hijack your impulse. Because where your seed flows, your future follows. You think it's just a habit, a private sin, a hidden indulgence. But in the unseen world, it's a transaction, a trade. You give away power and receive a moment of pleasure wrapped in shame. You were meant to create kingdoms with that energy, not feed demons. And while you sit there empty and scrolling, the dark economy is thriving, built on your delay, your distraction, and your disobedience. This is how the devil chokes divine provision, not with chains, but with lust. Because lust is cheaper than purpose, and far more profitable for hell. So the real question isn't why am I broke? The real question is, what am I leaking? If you've ever wondered why money slips through your fingers, why doors shut that should have opened, you're about to see what's been stealing from your future every time you press play. Stay with me. You're about to remember who you are. Before a dollar ever hits your hand, it flows through a realm unseen. The place where decisions are made, disciplines are tested, and destinies are either birthed or aborted. This is the invisible economy of the spirit. In this economy, your focus is currency, your purity is collateral, your obedience is an investment, and every single act of lust, especially secret, habitual masturbation, is a withdrawal. You don't just lose time or energy after you give in, you lose alignment with purpose, with divine provision, with the clarity that builds legacy. Because when your spirit is scattered by lust, your vision gets blurred, and without vision, your hands stop building. You no longer chase purpose, you chase escape. You no longer sow in faith, you spend out of fear. Understand this, the spirit realm runs on laws, just like the physical one. If you violate spiritual law, you will suffer physical lack. This is why the wisest men in history, from Solomon to Paul, warned us to guard our bodies, not just our wallet. Masturbation is a breach of spiritual stewardship. It leaks your inner fire, weakens your creative force, and clouds your decision-making. You can't build wealth with a fragmented mind and a weakened will. That's why the devil doesn't have to steal your money. He just breaks the flow that leads to it. He interrupts your momentum. He clouds your inner world with guilt, confusion, and delay. So you may still be working, still grinding, still trying, but deep inside, you're disconnected from the divine supply line that empowers everything you do. You're a builder with broken tools, a warrior with no armor, a king with no kingdom. And here's the truth no one tells you. You can tithe, hustle, pray, budget, and invest, but if the pipeline between you and heaven is clogged by compromise, you'll always feel like you're pushing a broken wheel uphill. Money is not just earned, it's released. And if your spirit is leaking, your blessings are blocked. Fix the leak, and the flow returns. Block the compromise, and the blessings come back. The invisible economy isn't theory. It's the reason your life is either rising or 2. The devil's most subtle contract. The devil doesn't need you to murder, lie, or steal to destroy your destiny. All he needs is your quiet, consistent cooperation with distraction. That's how he wins. Not with force, but with subtlety. And one of his most powerful contracts is written in secrecy, pleasure and repetition. Masturbation isn't just a private escape, it's a spiritual agreement. One that says, I choose temporary pleasure over long-term purpose. I choose numbness over discipline. I choose escape over elevation. You don't sign this contract with ink. You sign it with your will. You renew it with every relapse. And the cost isn't just guilt, it's momentum. Each time you give in, something is withdrawn. Not just energy, but clarity, confidence, and command over your reality. You feel more tired, more foggy, less connected to your goals. That's not a coincidence. That's a system. The enemy doesn't need to rob your bank account. He just has to make you spiritually dull, emotionally unstable, and mentally distracted. And when your mind is scattered, your money follows, because wealth requires focus, stability, and alignment. The subtle contract of masturbation says, I'm okay with being out of alignment, as long as I feel good for 5 minutes. But here's the twist. You never feel good after. You feel drained, disconnected from God, disconnected from yourself, ashamed, then angry, then numb. That cycle becomes your prison. This is how the devil breaks your financial flow. not with curses, but with consent. You gave him a key every time you said yes to the screen and no to your higher self. But there's good news. What was consented to can be revoked. You can break the contract. Not with guilt, but with decision. Not with religion, but with realignment. You're not weak. You're just under contract. But the ink was never permanent. Tear it, burn it, and write a new one with heaven. One rooted in discipline, vision, and divine identity. Because when your will is surrendered to God, your financial flow isn't just restored, it's multiplied. There is a kind of spiritual commerce happening in the invisible realm, and most people don't even realize they're part of the trade. Every time you give in to lustful self-gratification, especially through masturbation, you're not just satisfying a craving, you're making a transaction, a trade, power for pleasure. In the physical world, money changes hands in exchange for goods. In the spiritual world, energy, destiny, and authority are exchanged for moments of carnal relief. The enemy doesn't need you to sell your soul in one grand act. All he needs is your daily permission, small withdrawals from your spiritual bank. Each time you give in, you release more than a biological seed. You release creative energy, spiritual clarity, divine protection, and most dangerously, the raw power to manifest. That's why the enemy keeps pushing you toward lust. It's not about the act itself, it's about what's stolen through the act. When your body is in alignment with God, it becomes a conduit, a channel through which divine ideas, wealth, and provision can flow. But when that body is turned inward, addicted to self-stimulation, it becomes a closed system, circulating death, not life. Your seed is not just reproductive, it's prophetic. It carries the blueprint of legacy, influence, and purpose. Every time you waste it, especially in isolation, you're funding a spiritual system that works against your calling. And what do you get in return? Seconds of pleasure, followed by hours of guilt and days of spiritual dullness. That's demonic commerce, an unfair trade. You give power. Hell gives you silence, confusion, and stagnation. Even secular thinkers have hinted at this. Think of Napoleon Hill, who wrote about sexual transmutation, the idea that sexual energy is meant to be redirected into vision, focus, and wealth building. The enemy knows this too, he just doesn't want you to. So the longer you feed lust, the longer you delay destiny, because no man builds a kingdom while he's busy leaking bricks. This isn't just a physical issue, it's economics of the spirit. And if you're tired of being broke, stuck, or foggy, stop asking for more money and start closing the leaks. 4. The war between kingdoms starts in the mind. The fiercest battles aren't fought in the streets, they're fought in the stillness of your mind. Every war, whether spiritual, financial, or generational, begins with a whisper. A thought, an idea that wasn't yours, but felt like it was. That's the devil's oldest trick, to plant a thought, then step back and let you destroy yourself. He doesn't need to drag you into darkness. He just needs to convince you to pull the curtain yourself. When lust enters the mind, it doesn't arrive as fire, it arrives as a flicker, a passing image, a curious urge. But if you don't guard your inner gate, that flicker turns into a flame, and that flame becomes a fire that consumes your focus, your clarity, and your calling. Here's why this matters financially. Your provision follows your vision, and vision is impossible to sustain in a mind clouded by lust. Lust fragments you. You might still be working, grinding, building, but your attention is divided. Your discernment is dulled. Your decisions are no longer coming from conviction, but compulsion. And compulsion always costs. When you live in lust, you start tolerating delay. You normalize inconsistency. You justify procrastination. And these patterns are the bricks of poverty. Every time you feed lust, you're training your mind to expect cheap dopamine instead of divine discipline. That means when God tries to send you strategies, ideas, or wisdom for increase, your mind isn't prepared to receive it. The frequency is blocked. Demons don't just attack your body. They colonize your thought. They fill your mental space with distractions, so you never access the blueprint God hid inside your spirit. That's why Scripture calls us to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, because kingdoms rise and fall in thought first, and behavior second. When you win in your thoughts, your finances begin to align, your ideas sharpen, your instincts return. You start to attract opportunities instead of chasing them. The devil doesn't fear your bank account, He fears a man or woman whose mind is clear, clean, and connected to God. Because once your mind is fully submitted, your wallet has no choice but to follow. And the sound it leaves behind is shame, bouncing off the walls of your mind, building a prison with no bars, just regret. You tell yourself it's the last time. You swear you'll change. But a few days later, the same urge whispers, the same screen lights up, and the same shame returns. Louder, heavier, more familiar. And here's what most people miss. Shame delays destiny. Because shame lowers your spiritual voltage. It makes you walk smaller, think smaller, ask for less, expect delay, and silently believe that you're disqualified from breakthrough. Every time you fall, demons don't just celebrate the act. They weaponize the aftermath. They don't care about the moment of pleasure. They care about the days of paralysis that follow. You were meant to move boldly, to speak with authority, to take action on divine instructions. But shame makes you hesitate. It clogs your discernment. You no longer trust your own prayers or your own anointing. And in that hesitation, opportunity passes. Emails don't get sent. Ideas don't get executed. Divine connections fade into silence. This is how financial flow dies. Not because God stopped providing, but because shame stopped you from receiving. The devil's tactic isn't just temptation. It's delay. Delay in obedience. Delay in execution. Delay in the birth of the vision God put in your spirit. And the more you delay, the more you doubt. The more you doubt, the less you act. The less you act, the more time you lose. And time is currency in the spirit. When demons steal your time, they are robbing your inheritance. This is the echo chamber. Lust leads to shame. Shame leads to delay. Delay leads to lack. And lack feeds the cycle all over again. But here's the truth. You can break the echo, not by being perfect, but by standing back up. Every time with fire in your eyes and war in your spirit. God isn't looking for flawless people. He's looking for available ones. People who are done being delayed. People who are ready to confront the echo and speak back. Because the moment you break shame, you break the devil's silence over your life. 6 chosen ones and the weight of the mantle. The attacks on you aren't random. They're precise, calculated, because you are marked, set apart, chosen. And with that choosing comes a mantle, a divine responsibility that hell recognizes even before you fully do. You carry something that threatens darkness, influence, legacy, authority, generational wealth, and divine ideas. The mantle is not just a spiritual calling, it's a heavenly blueprint encoded into your soul. And demons don't attack mantles, they're not afraid of. The moment you start awakening to your identity, hell sends distractions, and one of the most effective, lust. Not just to defile you, but to delay you. Not just to entertain you, but to entangle you. The goal is simple. If they can keep you leaking, they can keep you lacking. Because the mantle requires a clear mind, a clean heart, and an undivided spirit. That's why your lust battles feel more intense than others. That's why temptations show up the moment you're about to break through. That's why you feel a war inside your chest every time you try to build something meaningful. Because you were designed to carry weight others cannot. And here's the hard truth. You can't carry the mantle and feed the monster at the same time. You can't walk in dominion and be a slave to dopamine. This is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about integrity with your assignment. Because when the mantle rests on a leaky vessel, the anointing becomes blocked. Ideas dry up, finances stall, influence fades. The enemy doesn't fear a man with talent. He fears a man with purity and purpose, fully aligned. Every time you choose obedience over indulgence, you reinforce the strength of the mantle. Every time you fast instead of fall, pray instead of scroll, you rise. You step deeper into what you were born to carry. You are not being attacked because you're weak. You're being attacked because you're dangerous. So hold the mantle with reverence. Guard your vessel with intensity. And remember, you were never meant to survive this life. You were meant to shift it. The 7. Lust is not a symptom. It's a strategy. Lust is not a random weakness. It is a precision weapon. Most people treat lust like a personal flaw, a private struggle, a minor imperfection. But that's exactly what the enemy wants you to believe. Because as long as you think it's just a temptation, you'll never realize it's a tactic. A carefully crafted spiritual assault designed to strip power, delay purpose, and destroy provision. Lust is the camouflage of spiritual warfare. It looks like pleasure. It feels like relief. But behind it is a strategy to drain divine energy and rewrote destiny. Understand this. Lust doesn't just aim to make you fall. It aims to make you forget. Forget your calling. Forget your momentum. Forget the financial flow tied to your clarity and conviction. The devil knows that a lust-filled mind is a fog mind, and in the fog you lose vision. You can't build what you can't see. You can't manifest what you can't hold in your spirit. So the enemy uses lust to fracture your focus, weaken your resolve, and scramble your spiritual signal. This is why your most powerful ideas vanish after a fall, why your confidence evaporates, why you keep starting over, because each indulgence is not just physical, it's transaction. You're trading strength for shame, strategy for sedation, vision for vanity. And here's the deeper truth. Lust follows patterns. It studies you. Demons don't just throw temptation at random. They observe. They track your emotional cycles, your lonely nights, your triggers. Then right before a breakthrough, they launch the same old lure. Because it works. Not because you're weak, but because you haven't seen it as warfare. This is not about guilt. It's about strategy. When you stop treating lust like a bad habit and start treating it like a demonic assignment, everything changes. You stop negotiating with it. You start defending against it. You don't manage it. You crush it. Every time you resist, you reclaim something hell tried to steal: your clarity, your favor, your provision. Because lust isn't just attacking your purity, it's attacking your power to produce. When you master this battle, the flow of your life changes. Because the devil never feared your sin. He feared your alignment. 8. The temples you're building or destroying. Your body is not just skin and bone, it's a temple. A sacred vessel crafted for dominion, vision, and divine authority. When God breathed life into man, he didn't just create a being, he created a blueprint for stewardship on earth. And every act you make, especially in secret, is either laying bricks of legacy or tearing down the walls of your own kingdom. When you release your seed carelessly, you're not just blowing off steam, you are tearing down the temple. You're demolishing what heaven is trying to build through you. Because that release contains more than biology. It carries the blueprint of creation, drive, innovation, clarity, and generational wealth. You are spending spiritual currency with every climax. And hell is banking on the fact that you'll never realize it. Every temple has gates, and lust doesn't break in. It waits for you to open the door. It doesn't just enter your body, it enters your focus, your finances, and your future. When lust is allowed to dwell in the temple, purpose is driven out. When you allow sexual impurity to rule your private life, you invite confusion into your public path. Masturbation isn't harmless. It's not neutral. It's either strengthening your altar or defiling your sacred. You may be praying for financial breakthrough, but heaven won't deposit blessings into a vessel that's leaking its potential through lust. Think about it. Would you pour oil into a cracked jar? Building your temple means choosing discipline over desire. It means closing the gate and guarding your inner sanctuary. It means treating your body like a throne, not a playground. When you fast from lust, you feed your spirit. When you resist the urge, you reclaim the throne. When you choose purity, your vision sharpens. And when vision returns, provision follows. You don't need more motivation. You need to rebuild your temple. Because every act of purity lays another brick. Every moment of restraint raises the walls higher. And one day your temple becomes a fortress, one the enemy can't penetrate. The choice is always yours. Build a temple that attracts heaven, or destroy it for a pleasure that lasts seconds, but costs you everything. To make your body so familiar with lust that purity feels foreign. But now you see it. Every moment of indulgence wasn't isolated. It was a crack in the gate, a legal access point, a leak in your divine authority. Your gates, eye gates, ear gates, mind gates, sexual gates, are sacred. They're the entranceways to your spiritual house. When left unguarded, demons don't need permission, they just need patterns, and every unrepented pattern becomes a key in their hand. It's time to reclaim the gates, not by striving, but by repentance, not by shame, but by alignment. This is not about guilt, it's about governance. You can't walk in divine overflow while giving demons open access to your seed. You can't cry out for financial breakthrough while heaven sees a door you won't close. Closing the gates means kebal. You monitor your thoughts like a military post, because imagination is currency. You delete what stirs the flesh and feed what stokes the spirit. You treat your sexual energy like gold, because it funds destiny. You choose consistency over cravings, alignment over impulse. Understand this: your discipline is your declaration of war. Every time you say no to lust, you say yes to divine flow. Every time you resist the temptation, you reclaim ground the enemy thought was his. Every act of purity rebuilds the walls that hell once breached. The moment you close the gates, the leaks stop, and when the leaks stop, provision returns. Ideas come, favor flows, money moves. Not because you worked harder, but because heaven finally has a clean vessel to pour into. You were never lacking, you were just leaking. You were never unworthy, just unaware. Now you know, now you've seen the scheme. And now you rise. Because this isn't just about sex, it's about sovereignty. You don't beg for blessing, you guard the gate. And when the gates are closed to hell, they swing wide open for heaven. 10. Final charge: rise, return, reign. This battle was never just about lust. It was about ownership. Ownership of your mind, your focus, your legacy, and ultimately your financial dominion. The enemy doesn't fear your money. He fears what you'll build with it. He fears the ministries, the movements, the multi-generational blessings that could rise if you ever truly stepped into your divine discipline. So he wages war in the shadows, not by taking your wealth, but by weakening your will. But here's the truth. You don't need more hustle. You don't need more knowledge. You need to seal the leak in your spirit. Rise, that means face the war head on. No more excuses. Every time you resist, you rebuild the gates of your soul. Every time you say no, you starve the spirit that's been feeding on your delay. Return to the altar, the silence, the source. Return to your vision, because the path was never lost. You were just distracted. You weren't disqualified. You were just deferred. And now, heaven is calling you back to alignment. Reign. Not in fantasy, not in fleeting feelings, but in spiritual authority. Authority doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from choosing purity in the fire. It comes from saying, I won't trade my birthright for a dopamine hit. I won't lose my crown for comfort. I won't feed demons with the same energy meant to fund my destiny. To reign means to take back territory in your thoughts, in your choices, in your time. It means commanding your body instead of being commanded by it. It means stewarding your seed like gold, because you were never meant to crawl through life broke, distracted, and double-minded. You were meant to walk in dominion, financially, spiritually, generationally. This is your charge. Close the gates, starve the lie, break the contract. The war was never about pleasure. It was about your power. Now rise, return to who you were before the compromise, and reign like the chosen one you are, because the throne has always had your name on it. You just needed to remember. This was about a carefully constructed spiritual strategy, a slow erosion of your clarity, confidence, and connection to God's financial flow. The devil doesn't come with horns anymore. He comes through algorithms, midnight cravings, and whispered excuses that sound like truth. And every time you give in, you're not just losing willpower, you're forfeiting your spiritual inheritance. Money was never the root of evil. Unconsecrated energy, when your seed, your focus, your attention, your life force is poured into lust, the spiritual soil of your destiny becomes infertile. The visions dry up, the doors stop opening, the momentum dies, and you wonder why your efforts hit a ceiling, why your hustle burns out, why your plans collapse right before breakthrough. Because you can't build a kingdom while leaking royalty. You can't claim abundance while entertaining bondage. You can't receive divine provision while feeding dark appetites. But here's the grace. You can stop. You can close the door. You can repair the altar and reopen the flow. Every time you resist, you reclaim what was stolen. Every time you rise in discipline, heaven rejoices and hell retreats. Don't let the enemy trick you into believing this is just a habit. It is a spiritual trade agreement, and you can cancel the contract today. You were never meant to survive paycheck to paycheck. You were never meant to scroll your way into spiritual poverty. You were designed for overflow, for impact, for divine stewardship. Your hands were meant to build legacy, not chains. Your body was made to house glory, not guilt. Your life was crafted to manifest heaven, not feed hell. So now, choose dominion, choose discipline, choose deliverance, because when you purify your gates, you activate your calling, and when you stop leaking your destiny, You start walking in financial power that no devil can touch. This is your moment. Rise, return, reign. Because money doesn't follow effort alone. It follows alignment. And when your spirit is aligned, the flow begins again.